Welcome to Igniting the Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James, and I am so thrilled to have Stephen Simon here with us today. Stephen, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm really, really happy to be with you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Well, and I just love these opportunities to drop in and have these really meaningful and important conversations with you. And, one of the things that we have spoken about that I think is so important to talk about in this interview is this amazing relationship that you've had with your wife, Lauren. And can you talk a little bit about that relationship from where it started? And then we'll talk about where it is now.
Okay, so I'll give you a little background on that. When Lauren and I met in 2003, Lauren had been through two very challenging marriages, and so had I. We had both sworn off ever getting married again, and neither one of us really had any intention to date again. She had her kids, I had my kids. That's where we were. So there was a screening of What Dreams May Come, a retrospect screening, because this is 5 years after it opened, at a theater in Gresham, Oregon, which is a suburb of Oregon. And I was invited to come speak, and I said no twice because we were editing a little film called Indigo, and I just didn't really want to come up to Portland. But when it's something's meant to be, something's meant to be, and I just finally realized I had to come do it. So I decided to do it. Lauren was invited by a mutual acquaintance to come to the screening, and she loved What Dreams May Come. But as she was driving to the screening, she turned around twice to go home because she just didn't. Why am I going to do this? There's no reason for me to do this. Her kids were at home with a babysitter. She finally convinced herself to go. So she's in the lobby. I'm in the lobby, and I see Lauren from behind. I had no idea who she was, actually from a 3/4 view. So I felt compelled to go up and say hello. She turned around, and we laughed about this so much afterwards. It felt like we just stood there staring at each other for a couple of minutes. It was probably no more than 5 or 10 seconds, but we also realized that we were looking in each other's eyes for something. And when we realized we were looking actually into a mirror, we both thought, oh my goodness, we found each other. On the night that we were supposed to, we found each other. It came to us very quickly. And I knew from that moment, Lauren knew from that moment that we were going to be together. And when Lauren had to leave early because we had the screening, I did a little talk. When she had to leave early, I was so crestfallen because I saw her walking up the aisle and I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to find her again? And fortunately, she turned around right before she left and looked at me, and I thought, okay, I know, we'll find each other. We did. That started a very, intense courtship. And a little bit less than 3 years later, we got married. And it was marrying my best friend, my soulmate, my twin flame. Lauren is and was a very gifted intuitive, and we talked about all the lifetimes that we had had together, and we realized there had been several. And I'm talking about not just going back centuries, I'm talking about going back a couple of millennia. And for your guests, no, you are very much not in Kansas anymore in this conversation. So we talked a great deal about it. We really just basically kept to ourselves. We had our kids, which was obviously something that we did. But in the last year, we didn't know of Lauren's life. Lauren became very intent on us talking very specifically about what we would do when one of us crossed over. And we thought it would be me because I was 17 years older than Lauren. And we talked very specifically, and she said, honey, we need to design this exactly the way we want it to be, because we both believe in that phrase, that which you think becomes your world, not only here, but over there. So on the morning of January 3rd, 2018, I woke up very early, which I always do. I went to the gym, as I always do, came home, took our dog for a walk, and I was surprised I didn't see Lauren. It was about 8 o'clock, but then I realized stayed up very late the night before watching television, which often happened. I went to bed earlier sometimes. So it took me a while to get up there. But when I finally did get up there, as soon as I walked in the room and walked around their bed, our dog, our white lab Lola, was snuggled up completely next to Lauren, didn't even raise her head when I walked into the room. And I realized that Lauren had transitioned in her sleep. I went up to her. I'm not going to be too graphic here for people, but I did realize that something was really wrong, and I touched her and she was cold. Something had happened several hours before, and I knew she was gone. I called 911. Uh, the EMTs showed up very quickly. They thought it was for me because several years later I had had a heart attack where my heart stopped 4 times, and these guys saved my life. And when they heard a call like this, they immediately thought it was me, but it wound up being Lauren. Also, in that call, I wasn't aware until later, but our kids told me that a police officer showed up because the 911 operator said, "This guy sounds so frantic. You better get up there and make sure he doesn't hurt himself." And at one point, my daughter said to the policeman, "Hey, look, my dad produced a movie called What Dreams May Come. Believe me, he is never doing anything to himself. There's not a chance of him doing that." Um, I went into obviously shock, PTSD, and the deepest grief that I could have ever imagined, and it was just a nightmare, a real nightmare. And I kept looking for her and hoping for her because we had talked about that contact. The first 6 weeks, there was nothing. Now, I have to say, there may have been something, but I wasn't conscious of it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
6 weeks later, she made contact with me in a very specific way. I don't want to go into that much detail now. In our book about this, in What Dreams Have Come, um, Loving Through the Veil, I talk about how she made contact with me, but I didn't hear her voice in my head, in my ears. I felt her in my heart, and I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. And for months, I questioned myself about it. I thought, am I several tacos short of a combination plate right now? Am I comforting myself by just believing this is happening? But there were so many things that she communicated to me that I knew that it was her. And it began a very intense, and I will tell you, daily conversation and connection between the two of us. I started making notes on legal yellow pads about those conversations because I knew I wouldn't remember a lot of them. And I wanted to specifically remember what everything Lauren said. That went on for about 8 months. I went to see my dear, dear friend and brother from another mother, Neil Donald Walsh, who was living in Ashland at that time. And we had an extraordinary dinner. Again, we described that in detail in the book. I won't go into it now, in which it became very clear that not only was this going to be a book, but it had to be a book that Lauren and I wrote together, which was exactly what happened. And then a couple of years later, the book came out. It's called What Dreams Have Come, and it is available exclusively on Amazon because we self-published it. And I do want to say something, and I know I've been talking for a long time, and then I'll shut up. I do want to say something to your guests who are watching. One of the things that we decided to do very early on is to put my email address in the book so that people could be in touch with me to discuss the experiences that they've had, have had, hope to have, or that other people that they know are having, of this communicating through the veil, because it is all over the world right now. I can't tell you that I know why, but the veil has definitely thinned, and people are often ridiculed for having these kind of conversations. They don't feel they can talk to family or friends, and we wanted to make sure that that could happen. So if you also go to our website, which is whatdreamshavecome.com, my email address is there as well. If you would like to share something along this line with me, I promise you 3 things. One, I will definitely read it myself. Number two, no one else has access to this other than myself. And number three, I will respond. I only ask a couple of things. One, please be patient with me. Sometimes, usually it's not more than 2 or 3 days, but sometimes, depending on the volume of the emails, it may take me up to a week. And I also want to let you know that I have completely retired from the film industry. I have nothing to do with filmmaking anymore. And I know some people have asked me to read a script or give them a reaction to it. And I want to be frank with you. I think over my career, I probably read somewhere between 12 and 15,000 scripts in about 45 years. And I no longer do that. So I can't help you with a film project. But if you've had an experience, please be in touch with me. I'll now take a breath, Stephanie.
Stephen, that offering in and of itself is so beautiful because this really has been for so long such a taboo subject.
Absolutely.
And, in doing research for my own book, what was stunning is the statistic that when people are polled, 73% of them actually have had these encounters. People do have these experiences, and being a psychotherapist for 36 years, I've had people in my offices telling me about these experiences. I know it's a universally shared experience, and how beautiful to have an outlet that's so safe in which to
Absolutely.
discuss it.
Well, I look forward to it. I've received several hundred emails, and I literally have responded to all of them, and I will continue to do that. So if you have something you want to share with me, please, please do.
Thank you. Yeah. And the thing I'm curious about as well is you and Lauren had such a beautiful relationship before she transitioned. And now, how has your relationship changed and what new depths have you experienced, even though you can't touch her in physical form, where she's daily with you in your heart?
Well, it is, in all truth, not much has changed. It's kind of like us the way we were before, except we're not physically in the same space. Although there are times, and there are several of them, there are times when Lauren communicates with me, and I know she's communicating, let's just put it this way, from over there. And then there are times when she's actually in the room with me. And there's a very specific tell when that happens. I know she's actually physically, not, she's spiritually there.
Yeah, yeah.
And those are extraordinary times. I mean, really extraordinary times. And we talk just like you and I are talking now. We laugh, usually at me, which is the way it was when Lauren was still physical. We have very long conversations about all different kinds of things. There are certain things I ask Lauren that Lauren very lovingly often tells me, honey, I can't right now. First of all, that kind of communication I can't do through the veil. And also, there are certain things that you're asking me that honestly, while you're still in human form, you won't be able to grok. And I'll give you some examples of that. When people have a certain feeling and they say, I'm feeling it, but I just can't put it into words. No, you can't, because it's a feeling. And a feeling is a feeling. That's how our souls connect with us. It's how our souls communicate with us. There are no words to describe some of those feelings. That's kind of some of the stuff that goes on between Lauren and myself. Recently has kind of escalated into a whole nother realm, which I'm not quite yet prepared to talk about, but it's extraordinary. And literally it is almost every day. Almost every day. And I can tell you, when I say almost every day, it's probably every day, and sometimes one or two times a day. It is an extraordinary thing for me. And if I had ever had any concerns about what happens when I cross over, they're completely gone. I'm certainly not going to do anything to hasten it, because it's not my time yet. And I know it's not my time yet, but when it is, I'm going to be happy for us to both be on the same side of the veil. And people have said, well, I hope you'll be in touch when you are. And I have just had to say to them, yes, I'm going to talk about this in human terms, but there's going to be about a 10-year hug first. So give me a little bit of time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that knowingness, Stephen, that it continues on, that death is just another chapter in the eternity of our souls. How does that better inform how you're living right now?
That's a wonderful, wonderful question. In that I am aware right now that I am still here for a particular reason. Lauren and I both believed and believe that, and we use this analogy in the book, and it was told to me, this is not original, but I think it's a wonderful way to look at what happens between lives. You're between lives and you're planning your next life. So it's kind of like, here's the metaphor, you go out to a running track and you and your soul, and in this case, your twin, our twin flame, me and her, you set up the hurdles that you feel and your soul feels you need to address in your upcoming life. And you're very careful how close you set up the hurdles, how high you set up the hurdles, how many they are, and then you're born. And of course, you've forgotten completely about the running track. And then you live your life, and you often get very irritated at the idiot that set up all these hurdles so high and so close together, forgetting that it's you. We felt that. We had a very specific plan for this lifetime. There was no way I was going to be the first one to transition because obviously the culmination of this was writing this book together. And the only way that that book would make sense to be written together would be for her over there and me here, because also of the parallels that it has to films that I produced, like Somewhere in Time and What Dreams May Come, which are about a man, and it could have been a woman, but in this case, both of them, they were a man searching for his wife after she has transitioned. That's what Somewhere in Time was about. They're together. That's what Dreams May Come was about. They're together. It's what my spiritual journey with creating the Spiritual Cinema Circle, which we operated for 16 years, in which we set up movies of an uplifting spiritual nature to people. It's what doing, and it was one of the great gifts of my life that Neil allowed me to do the film version of Conversations with God. It's a little movie we did called Indigo, and it culminates with this book. So this is now my entire focus of my life, that and being a dad and a grandfather. And it's really wonderful because it has given me a new purpose at the age of almost 78. As I said, I'm not doing anything in the entertainment industry anymore. And if I tried, they would probably laugh in my face because I'm about 35 or 40 years too old to be doing that in the industry the way it is formulated today. And it has really given me a wonderful new purpose. And I look forward to getting up in the morning and facing the day and being able to communicate with people about all this. And some of the stories that I've read, the life experiences that people are having, there is something magical, beautiful that is going on out there. And again, I don't know why. And if Lauren knows why, she's not telling me, which is perfectly okay. That's my life.
So beautiful, Stephen. And I know from our past conversations, that was one of the interesting things that we spoke about, how art often imitates life. And for you, it was art imitates life, imitates art.
Yes. No accidents. No accidents. You know, I came to spirituality very young when I was just before my 5th birthday. My birth father died suddenly. And then my mother remarried, and he was a producer and a director in the film industry, a very successful one in the 40s. My mother remarried another film producer. So it was obvious that I came here to be in the film industry. We moved into a new house, and I started telling my mother and my stepfather that there was a man in my wall at night. And they were like, uh-oh, can we find a child psychologist to help this kid? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. Are you scared, Stephen? No, I'm not scared at all. I love him. He's great. He's very comforting. And of course, it wasn't for quite a while and for me to realize that was the spirit of my dad. And that kind of propelled me, even when I was younger, even when I was a teenager into loving movies like It's a Wonderful Life and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir and Lost Horizons. And so there's no question that, yes, I came to this life to find Lauren and be married for the period of time that we were to be together, and then for us to write this book together. But I also came to this life to be a filmmaker whose focus really needed to be getting some of these spiritual concepts into so-called mainstream movies. And I have to say, Somewhere in Time was not a mainstream movie. What Dreams May Come was not a mainstream movie, but it was. These are movies that have passionate followings around the world, and it was really to kind of get these spiritual messages out into the world. So this has been my whole life, and the culmination of my life right now. And I have to say, I consider myself an incredibly lucky human being.
Well, and how beautiful that those messages did get out, and I know that What Dreams May Come was an Academy Award winning film. So people were hearing that. When I hear like, oh, this was Academy Award winning, if I haven't ever checked out that film, I'm always like, oh, what was that about? I want to see that. So in a way, it opened the door for so many more people to experience the beauty and the message in that film.
Yes, and a thank you for that, by the way. One of the core messages of What Dreams May Come is that which you think becomes your world. People have asked me, what is it like on the other side? And I can't answer that question, and it frustrates some people because it's different for everybody. It is according to your beliefs, your heart, your soul. It is very different for everybody. There isn't a one size fits all. It's very different. And we very specifically had a line in What Dreams May Come when Robin is in this extraordinarily beautiful painted world, where he's the only human thing in the painted world for a while. And then Cuba Gooding, who plays his guide, but also we find out later his son, um, says to him, everyone paints their own surroundings here. You're the only one that's ever used real paint. And everyone paints their own surroundings is a very good way of putting it. Um, I think his name is Thomas Monroe. I may be wrong, but an author once said, we live when we cross over on islands of consensual realities, which is there are realities that many of us dream of and project, and we can be around like-minded people and like-hearted people on the other side. This is one of the things that recently I have been urging people who get in contact with me, whose loved ones are still here, that if you believe in this, you might start thinking about, well, what do we want that to look like? What is that? What do we want it to feel like? And Lauren and I were very specific about that. Lauren went into trance one night and said to me, honey, write everything down. And I did. And it was very, very specific. And from what I understand from Lauren, that's exactly what she's living there right now.
Yes. And again, reflecting on the film, when Robin Williams goes out of the painting then and is able to find her, do you have that sense too, Stephen, that even though maybe that's how he initially wrote it, the way that maybe those two souls wrote it inevitably together is what's happened with you and Lauren?
Yes, we did not in that film because that would have been, I think, a bridge too far for a lot of the audience to accept. So we didn't actually put that in the film, but I do believe that is something that was predetermined for them to do. That was a journey they were going to have together. I do want to say something about dreams as well, if I might, for just a couple of minutes,
Yeah.
because there is one thing about dreams that I really regret. And here's the regret. We did not make it clear enough, I'm afraid, in the film that Annie being where she was number one, it was not hell. It was absolutely not hell. And because of her suicide, she was not sentenced to be there. She
Mm.
was not forced to be there. She chose to be there because she in her soul felt that that was something that she needed to experience. And unfortunately, some people saw the film as everyone who commits suicide goes into this really dark place and has to be rescued. That is not what we meant. And for people who felt that, who had other people take their own lives, the fact that I know it hurt some people, I want to tell you I am deeply, deeply sorry for that. It is certainly not what we intended to do at all.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's so meaningful. And the other piece that you're speaking of is the piece that is it's so comforting, Stephen, and so the only word that comes to mind is hopeful in a way that we can actually do this. It gives comfort to the soul, to our minds to say, it's all right. We can relax into this. We don't have to fear death. That there's actually a way we can befriend this whole process and actually be co-creators in this next chapter.
And this is, by the way, now I am not going to sit here and pretend to you that I understand entirely what quantum really means. Quantum is a very, very esoteric practice. And I understand a little, but I don't understand the whole thing. But I do understand this. What quantum physics has already accepted now as a given, that our consciousness does not and cannot die. It is eternal. And somebody who is very aware of quantum said to me once, Stephen, if Robert Oppenheimer was still here, or if he was here again at this stage in human development, he would be trying to figure out how we can communicate through the veil. Because knowing that our consciousness, our soul, our essence cannot and does not die leads to an entirely different conversation. And I know that that's somewhat counter for people to what they've been taught in their lives, to what they have thought life was really all about. But I think we're at a new plateau in human development where we're beginning to realize certain things that we never really had the ability to do. And there's an incredibly open path now to literally never fearing death again. Now, it doesn't mean you should court it. And it doesn't mean that if, God forbid, a child dies of some disease or something like that, that it's fine and no one should worry. I mean, of course, it's traumatic and it's terrible. But for those of us who live to a certain age, and I'm going to be 78 next month, I'm at that age that knows that I have spent a lot more time here physically in this life than I'm going to be spending in the future. It does take away that fear. And that's extraordinary. I mean, it's an incredible gift. I look forward to the moment that I do cross over and I understand a lot of these things more than I do right now. But I'm at complete peace right now that Lorna is letting me know everything that I can and should know now.
Absolutely beautiful. And I think that, again, this is the essential conversation. And my hope, Stephen, too, is that more people start having these kind of conversations, that it's conversations like ours that become the portal for more and more conversations where more people feel normalized in their own experience and their own experiences of being in touch with life beyond the veil, that we can help usher this as a new era
Well, and
to
I do want to say
humanity.
that that is exactly what you're doing with your new book as well, and which I am very honored that you have included me in. And I want to tell you people that it is an extraordinary book. I know Stephanie will be talking about this more in the future when it finally is released. But you know, you're making a major contribution to this as well. These conversations need to, as you said, need to be had. And when you, as a psychotherapist, um, who cannot be considered a few tacos short of a combination plate, um, when you are opening this conversation as well, you know, again, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is exciting. You know, this is not intimidating or frightening. It's exciting. You have to be willing to live a bit in the unknown And I think that's an extraordinary place to be where we don't have all of the answers. But I can tell you, and I know we don't have time to do this now, film, particularly over the last 30, 40, 50 years, has been bringing us along into this. I'm just going to use one example. The Matrix films. The Matrix films were all about something that quantum is delving into deeply now, which is, what if life is the dream? And when we die, we wake up. What is real? What is not real? What is the other side? All of this stuff is absolutely fascinating. It's something that I was honored to bring up in certain ways, in dreams and in Somewhere in Time, that other filmmakers are doing now, other filmmakers have done in the past. Something as simple as Kevin Costner saying in Field of Dreams that he's hearing a voice say, if you build it, he will come, which is his dad coming back. Or if you build it, they will come, which is the baseball players. If you build it and they will come, which is the audience and people who are curious. This is a magical time to be alive with all of the terrible things that are going on around the world, with all of the things that are driving us apart, which is so sad to see. There is something incredibly hopeful in this. And then on top of that, maybe we'll be lucky enough that some alien civilization will actually finally consciously contact us and say, hey, folks, we love you. We don't want to hurt you. We're not here to do anything to harm you, but you guys got to get your act together. Just recognize you're all human beings. You're all in this together. Figure out a way to compromise again. Figure out a way to respect each other's feelings and thoughts again, even if you don't share them. Because if you don't, we may take you out. That might be good for us. That might be a very good thing.
Well, and I agree, Stephen. And to me, this essential message as well is that we can continue to return to where we most need to return to, and that's our hearts, where our soul resides. It's that message of love that's eternal. It never ends. It is us. It comes to us as the divine spark that lives then through us. And that's what we need to return to.
It is indeed. And I think one other message that I would like to impart to people, in the first few weeks after Lauren transitioned, then first of all, I begged to die. I begged to die. And so I could be with her. I couldn't imagine facing this life without her physically there with me. To say I was distraught is an understatement, and everyone who has somebody close to them like that transition feels the same way. I'm not, and it was not unique in that. One night, I was so distraught that I called Neil, and I couldn't even speak for a while. And in his incredibly kind, gentle way, he didn't say anything. He just waited. And finally, I could catch my breath, and I said, Neil, I'm out of my mind with grief. And Neil said to me, good. I'm like, what? He said, good, Stephen. You need to be out of your mind and in your heart. And this is something I really want to impart to everyone. This is a time in which we really need to be in our hearts. One of the movies that we quote in our book has a line in it that the heart is a mysterious organ. It plays by its own rules. It is. It is a rule. It is an experience of feeling. It's an experience of emotion. Your brain is a little mini computer that kind of spits back to you what you've put into it. And your brain does not necessarily understand the language of the heart because it is a completely different process. When you are feeling these kinds of things, if you can just be with your feelings and don't let anybody tell you, well, that's just what you're feeling. Just look at this with logic. No. Your brain understands logic. Your heart has no understanding of logic at all. Your heart is about love and about feeling and passion and compassion. Be in your heart. it is something that is very difficult for some people to actually come to, and much more natural for other people to come to, because in your heart there really is peace.
Thank you, Stephen. That was so beautifully put. And I want to make sure people know again how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So go to whatdreamshavecome.com. Don't do whatdreamsmaycome.com. You'll get the movie. Whatdreamshavecome.com. The link to the Amazon page where our book is for sale is there, and my email address is there. And again, please do that. Please be in touch with me. I really would like to share these experiences with you. I am not a medium. I am not an intuitive. And unlike dear Stephanie, I am not a therapist. I am just an ordinary guy going through an extraordinary experience. And whatever I have learned and am learning, I am more than happy to share with you. And I look forward to learning from you as well.
Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your experiences, and your spark with all of us.
Thank you. It's been a great blessing, Stephanie. Thank you.